Well, do we have some good news to talk about today? Now, I don't want to overblow how good this news is. I want to emphasize, especially towards the end of this segment, that there are a lot of caveats and a lot of buts that go along with this. However, we got some good news. Some good-ass news. It's not the best perfect news. There's definitely some caveats that I will get into, but Biden's marijuana pardon is a significant step from CNN. Let's go ahead and give it a listen. Let's hear it from our reporter here. Let's hear it.
President Biden taking his first steps, possibly, towards the decriminalization of marijuana on the federal level. He is pardoning all prior federal offenses of, quote, simple marijuana possession. This will clear convictions for several thousand Americans. President Biden is now also encouraging governors to follow his lead and pardon those convicted on similar state charges.
All right, so should I take this apart piece by piece, or should I let the whole segment play first? Should I give my caveats and like my concerns and my, additional things we need to, consider now or after it's finished playing? What do you guys think? All right, we'll let it play first. I'll let it play. I'll let him tell the entire story.
The Biden administration also says that it will begin to review the
celebrate
federal classification of marijuana. Right now, marijuana is still a Class 1 drug alongside heroin and LSD, which means that according to the federal government, marijuana, cannabis, has no accepted medical use at the federal level, despite study after study suggesting positive health benefits from medical marijuana, which is legal in more than 37 states and the District of Columbia. Let's get right to CNN's Caitlin Conlon, our chief White House correspondent who's at the White House. Caitlin, today's move is a step towards fulfilling a Biden campaign promise.
Yeah, Jake, a campaign promise that he made in 2020. It's a major shift for the federal government to take this position, and it's also potentially life-changing for thousands of people. With President Biden saying that he will pardon people who have been convicted of marijuana possession on the federal level. That is going to affect about 6,500 people, at least, Jake, potentially thousands more when you take into consideration the District of Columbia. That's based on estimates from senior officials who were briefing reporters on this decision that President Biden made. And he had faced some questions, Jake, over the last about 2 years or so since he took office about when he was going to take action on this particular step. And officials told reporters today it was a decision that had been on his mind for some time, one he is now moving toward doing. You're right, it is not the full decriminalization that some people have called for, but it is a significant step and a very big shift for the federal government to take this step, Jake. And he is also, in addition to that, encouraging governors to consider taking the same step for people who are convicted on state offenses, on state charges, to also take a step and looking at the people who have been convicted of simple marijuana possession. And Jake, it might be that last part that is also incredibly significant that you talked about there when it comes to the Schedule 1 drugs and asking the HHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Attorney General to look into how that is considered, because obviously fentanyl is not even considered a Schedule 1 drug, and you've seen the deaths that has caused, especially in teenagers in the United States. So that's a major step there. We'll see how that review goes. And when the president talked about why he was doing this, Jake, he said in a statement that sending people to prison for possessing marijuana has upended too many lives and incarcerated people for conduct that many states no longer prohibit. Criminal records for marijuana possession have also imposed needless barriers to employment, housing, educational opportunities. And Jake, he notes that while white and black and brown people use marijuana at similar rates, black and brown people have been arrested, prosecuted, and convicted at disproportionate rates. And Jake, he is working to change that with this decision today.
We love Brandon. Whoa, what are you playing? Stop it. Stop it. You have no right. You have no right, CNN. Anyway, yes, all of that sounds very good. And it is very good. This is, in fact, a pretty damn big W on Biden's part and on the part of many Americans. So, to summarize what Biden has done, he has pardoned federal charges for simple marijuana possession. Federal charges for simply marijuana possession. Now, there's a lot to consider here in how impactful that is. Many of you probably heard this will help about 6,500 people. I think that was the number, 6,700 maybe. And you were probably surprised the number was that low. Hyper's in chat if you were surprised by that number being so low. And if you're wondering why that number is so low, because I'm about to explain why it is. Good. The reason why that number is so low is that the vast majority of marijuana enforcement, as far as like it being illegal and enforcing the law, is up to the states. It is very, very, very exceedingly rare to get charged with even possession of marijuana or intent to distribute or distribution or anything like that, and to actually get federal charges. You might on distribution, but with possession, federal charges are rare as all hell. So it does not surprise me that only a few thousand people are going to benefit from that particular pardon. Another thing to consider, outside of it being federal charges, is that marijuana possession in and of itself is a very rare single cause for incarceration. Like, it definitely happens, much more so on the state level. However, usually possession charges, usually the charges are trumped up. People are guilted into plea deals or threatened into plea deals, scared into plea deals. Sometimes guilty verdicts, guilty pleas are threatened out of people. That there has been stories, particularly of young teenage black men being arrested and being just screamed at and berated by the police into confessing to crimes they didn't commit. These are things that happen. And unfortunately, these are the things that what Biden has done here are not going to solve. This is, in every way possible, probably the least impactful form of what he did he could have done. I don't know if any other charge he could have pardoned would have been less impactful. That's not to say it wasn't impactful, though. It definitely is. Not to mention, this is just a first step if what he said is to be believed, right? The rescheduling is a pretty big deal. Currently, marijuana and heroin are both Schedule 1 drugs. They're both scheduled at the same level. And as the lady in the CNN video pointed out, fentanyl, something that is killing a lot of people right now, a lot of teenagers, is not even close to scheduled at a 1. And a large part of why marijuana is so heavily scheduled on a federal level goes back to the inception of the drug war. The Reagan administration, well, obviously that was more of a crack cocaine thing, but it was also with weed as well. The Reagan administration was hell-bent on making drugs a brown people thing in America, and to make that be the stereotype that black and brown people here in America have to struggle with when it comes to racist propaganda for a very long time. And, the propaganda wasn't enough, so obviously then, they had to do the crack cocaine epidemic. You already know about all that. But yeah, there's just a lot going on here that I think it's important to remember this is not as big of a win as I feel like a lot of people have been acting like it is. Another thing to keep in mind is that this is only the first step to full decriminalization and legalization. Both need to happen. Right now, there's a really big issue when it comes to marijuana dispensaries in that they cannot work with anything other than cash. And that may seem like it's the only... You might have noticed that if you go to dispensaries, right? You can only really use cash. You have to go to an ATM and you have to pull out cash and then you pay with cash and everything. That may seem like it's the only downside of the current federal treatment of the marijuana industry. But in truth, that is actually only one symptom of the problem. Marijuana being federally illegal means that banks cannot engage, cannot give loans to businesses for cannabis businesses. They cannot deal with credit cards or in debit. They have to use all cash, and yet they are still taxed. In fact, they are taxed more, I believe, because that's one of the conditions of getting marijuana legalized in a lot of these places, is to tax it a lot. There's a lot of downsides that comes along with weed being federally illegal. A huge part of it is the racial disparity in dispensary ownership. Because you can't really get a loan from a bank to start a dispensary, you already have to have the capital up front to start the business. And there aren't a lot of POC aspiring business owners out there with the capital on hand to put down to start an entire dispensary business. You have to start a grow op, and then you have to get like licensing. You have to hire employees, buy land for both growing and selling the weed. There's so much money that has to go into it. And this basically negates starting a dispensary to people that are already pretty damn wealthy, which has meant that if you ever go to a dispensary and you see the people that own it, they're usually wealthy and white. And if they're not white, they're still wealthy, and they probably always were wealthy. Certainly they were before they started the dispensary. This is simply a product of the fact that marijuana is not federally legal. It is not even in states where it is legal. The federal jurisdiction hangs over them like a cloud that, for example, you may be in California where weed is legal, but the second you step onto an airport, like you go to LAX or something, you can't have weed at LAX. That is federal property. You are now breaking federal law once you enter an airport with weed. Even if, say, 3 steps outside that airport, it's totally legal. It's one of those very weird legal issues that we've had to deal with here in America for a while now. One of those big issues where, like, you can try, you might want to travel, like, by plane from a state where weed is legal to another state where weed is legal, and you're not allowed to bring it. Because you have to enter federal property to do so, and you can't bring the weed through there, even though where you're coming from and your destination, weed is legal. These are the types of things that will be solved by federal legalization. Weed should not be put on a lower schedule. It should be descheduled. It should not be a scheduled drug. It should not be criminalized in any measure. And frankly, another huge part of this issue is that we have to find a way to pardon the state offenses. The vast majority of these charges are on a state level, and the vast majority of them have extra charges thrown in there. Distribution charges are a very common one. It is very, very, very easy for cops to throw intent to distribute or distribution charges on top of possession to make a case stronger. It's so easy to fudge it up. It's very common, too. The vast majority, I would be willing to bet, of people out there that need to have their record expunged on this kind of thing are not holding federal possession charges of weed. They've got state charges in places like Georgia, Alabama, where else? Kentucky, just generally red states where weed's not legal. Texas, and they've been charged by the state, and they probably have multiple charges, all of them bogus, all of them basically all of them were basically based on the grounds of possession of marijuana in the first place in regards to them being crimes. Another big one is you get caught with possession of weed and you have a legal firearm on you. Guess what? That legal concealed carry firearm you had on you with a bag of weed in your pocket, the cops now think you're a drug dealer. They can now charge that as being a weapon that you use to intend as a tool for crime. And they can charge you as like a potential like real criminal. That's a real thing. That happens. There's just so many angles you have to consider that I think there needs to be like, honestly, what Biden would have to do, or what the Democrats would have to do in general, at some point would be build some sort of committee whose job it would be to go over the criminal records of those with like any charges that involve possession of marijuana or any marijuana related charges, look over their specific case and follow a set of fairly loose guidelines that allow for specific circumstances where it's very obvious that, maybe this decision is more correct than the other. Basically, a committee that goes over these records and expunges them if it is deemed that this person is not considers their behavior, and basically expunges their record if it seems like they've reformed themselves in society. That would be an amazing policy. Building a committee whose job it is to focus on this, on like going over all of these criminal records, looking at the people who hold them, looking at what they've done with their lives, whether or not it seems like these charges should be expunged, and expunging them if they should be. This will only help people. It doesn't really seem that hard either. Building a committee that could do this, I feel like a lot of this process could be automated too. It's a matter of jurisdiction, though. Does the federal government, does the legislative branch, have the authority over the states to say, your laws on this drug being illegal, we've decided that is no longer constitutional, and we're going to retroactively go back and expunge the records of the people that you have charged? I don't know if the states have that power. I don't know if the legislative branch specifically has that power. Or executive branch, sorry. Getting it mixed up. I don't know if the executive branch has that power. Does it? To oversee, like, state charges on people? Is that a power Biden has? I really can't tell. I'll have to look into that more myself, but I will say, as much as I feel like I've doomered about it a little bit, because there are a lot of caveats to this is a step in the right direction. And not only politically is it a step in the right direction, because it means that we're really setting the stage for more policy, pro-marijuana policy in the future. It's not just that, but how many Americans can you think of that base their politics on who is the most pro-weed right now? Who is the most likely to make it so I can just go around the corner and buy some weed with no worry about legality or anything like that? How many people can you think of who base their politics on that? Who are going to hear this story and hear about this and get that big reminder? The Democrats, Dark Brandon, the left, those are the ones fighting for you to be able to smoke it up. Those are the ones fighting for your green. Not the Republicans, not the conservatives, not Donald Trump, who hung the idea of marijuana legalization over his fan base's head for 5 years. No, the left are the ones out here protecting your green. With all that said, if you enjoyed this segment, please consider leaving a like, subscribe, and ring the bell icon if you're new and you want to see more from me and you want YouTube to actually tell you when I go live or upload a new video. Make sure to also turn on all notifications when you ring that bell icon. And of course, if you want to see more from me online, you can follow my social medias, which are all linked down below in the description, including my Instagram, Twitter, Instagram, Twitter, fan Discord, and my TikTok. Make sure to follow all of that because, I'm trying to build my platforms on build my presence on other platforms. You can also support me financially if you've got the money for it and you don't need it for anything else over on my website, xanderhall.com/live, in the form of a donation, a gifted sub, or even just a sub for yourself. And of course, you can financially support me over on YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, and even through Patreon. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and have a good one.